connection to Lebo and a bicycle connection to Park Avenue, basically the Road Vista Park connector. Those would be eligible since that tip item includes those.
That's correct. And I said this before, and I don't know if it sounds good that we do it this way. So because each of those sub-area plans, the 303 corridor, they all have their unique projects within them. So now technically, yeah, we could take it and add it to that. You make it a 12-page document if we want. But what we do is we name the plan as a way to cover it so that it will cover everything that's in there. So that is correct of how we have done it in the past.
Perfect. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And I know there's a lot of Infrastructure Act money coming down the pipeline. Learned about this last week. So it's good to make sure we got our bases covered. We can get the funding. And I do want to say I do appreciate the public comments on the 2016 comprehensive plan, how it came together. I do have to say that it's what was approved by council back then. So it's what we have to work off. But I think it's great to do lessons learned as the new comprehensive plan is underway. We as a council now and staff have the ability to make sure that reflects the people's will. So excellent. So before I call the question, yeah.
Just a couple of quick adds. One is that the reason all of the changes that come before you today are the result of the meeting yesterday. Mm-hmm. One of the adds is traffic calming, which is something that was in the 2016 comprehensive plan, but had apparently not made it to at least this tip. I don't know about previous tips. Yeah, that's, final point, which is that this, the tip did come through Public Works Committee and Ms. Grover presented it at that time. And I asked to see that as soon, as opposed to just a shared screen, to actually see it as soon as it was ready for distribution. And the first time I saw it was when everyone else saw it, which is when it was included in the study session packet. That's all. Thank you very much.
Can I respond to the traffic calming issue?
Oh, yes, because that was clarified on email. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so traffic calming is actually covered into the tip, but it's under the very first item of city safety improvements. It's under that general item. There is money. It's tier 1 because it's funded for like $40,000 for our operations staff to do some things every year. But it was requested to be added as a discrete project, and it doesn't hurt to add it as a discrete project under tier 3 in case we have a big traffic calming bundle that we want to go get grant money for. But traffic calming, it was in the tip, but it's not separated out specifically. So we just, so that's what we did.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Close it out real quick and then let's move on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lever. That's super clear. After this meeting, would it be possible for you to email to council the place where we can find the descriptions of each of these TIP projects so that we don't make this mistake again?
No, it's in the comp plan and it's in sub-area. It's not one place for me to email it to.
Okay.
It's buried in multiple documents that have been executed since 2016.
Okay.
And before that, like the the non-motorized plan, I meant to say, and like the Skia sub-area plan. So these projects are salted through numerous documents and projects that went on, for years. So I can't give you one email to get, but I think it speaks to maybe something that we can improve in our comp plan process to try to get better clarity and scoping and description and cost estimating for projects that we want to prioritize in the comp plan process that Vicki is embarking on right now.
Here you go.
How's that? Okay.
I promise not to speak anymore, so I'm not speaking.
Would I be allowed just to make one comment?
Sure.
So, when people say, where we're at right now, it doesn't represent Bremerton right now, I agree. That's why we update the comp plan every 6 years. That's part of what that process is required by state law, because it does change. So I agree with you all when you say that, and let's put our new vision into the effort that we've got forthcoming very soon. So can't wait to have everyone's input. We'll be looking forward to it and counting on it.
Excellent. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the question.
Chamberlain,
Yes.
Fry,
Yes.
Dennehy,
Yes.
Michael never came in. Good, oh, Mochler,
Yes.
Younger,
Yes.
Coughlin.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Grover.
Thank you.
All right.
1.5.
Yes, let me take a quick 2-minute pause to consult with city attorney on one agenda related issue.
There's a great line of poetry by Odysseus Elitis that really looks like this, where the mountains are continued by the clouds to a greater
Put
height.
on B1.5.
Yeah, but are we doing it now?
No.
So-
Okay, so I think we're good. All right, we'll move on to item B1, which is long title. Retirement Plan Advisory Consulting Agreements with Decision Point Financial LLC and Spectrum Pension Consultants Incorporated as additional administrators of the city of Bremerton, amended and restated 457B Supplemental Retirement Program Plan. Human Resources Analyst, William Denton is here to present. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, council.
Evening.
So I am before you to request to add Decision Point Financial as an additional investment option for our employees for their deferred compensation plan. I also have Matt Daly here, and a consultant, so that he's going to be available to answer any questions you have regarding that plan. The reason I'm here is because it is in our deferred plan document that the legislative body has to approve new administrators. Okay, so that's why this is coming before you. So I have the fire union president actually reached out to me, was interested in this plan and asked that I look into it. I did. I did my due diligence. I got some references. South Kitsap Fire, Central Kitsap Fire, City of Bainbridge Island Fire, and the City of DuPont. The City of DuPont uses it for all their employees. So this isn't just going to be for the fire department, it's going to be for all employees to be able to take advantage of. There are no fees to the city. All the fees are, paid by the people investing in this program. The contracts have been reviewed and approved by legal. And I think that's it. Any questions I can answer, or Matt, we'd be happy to.
Excellent. Council, questions or comments? Yes, Eric.
So why are we switching?
We're not switching, we're just adding one. So instead of having 3, we'll have 4.
So
Choices for
the
people.
employees can choose from any one of 4
Anyone or all
plans?
4 of them.
Okay,
Yes,
so you're just adding to the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So no one's being forced to
Nope.
go on to this, and
Nope.
they can read the documents and determine if the fee is competitive to the other 3
Yes,
plans.
sir. Mhm. And Matt has agreed to come and give presentations to our employees.
Okay.
So.
Well, given that we're not picking one plan and forcing on the city, or you're just adding another one to the basket,
Mhm.
I don't have any issue.
Yep, Quinn.
And just to follow up on that, so for me, when I was at UW, I was in the state system. Now I'm in the Seattle city system that has portability. I also have the 457, which is
Uh-huh.
voluntary.
Mhm.
Is that what this is, like
It is. It's
above
our-
and beyond your
Yes,
normal?
it's our
10%?
457B
Okay.
plan.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Did you have
Answered.
Okay, perfect. All right, any other questions, comments? I have none personally, sounds great. So everyone good with consent, thumbs up? All right, this will go on consent next week.
Alrighty, thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Have a good evening.
Excellent. All right, I'm gonna insert an item B1.5 here. And did you want to, or Nicotai, yeah, okay. The project manager, Nicotai from Public Works, is gonna give a quick update on the Washington and 11th roundabout project.
Thank you, Council President. B1.5, I like it. Let me pass these out. So I appreciate the opportunity to sneak onto the agenda tonight. I'll keep one. So last Wednesday, the council approved an award for the Washington 11th project to Northwest Cascade. The project, of course, has federal funds administered by WashDOT. So that was concurrent, and WashDOT was required to make that award whole. That language is included in the agenda bill. Unfortunately, as much as we'd like to receive that concurrence before we go to council, WashDOT was delayed in getting us a tentative response. And we got that response this Monday that they deemed Northwest Cascade non-responsive due to some irregularities in the proposal. So of course, as staff, we recommend award that's based on our cursory review. WashDOT's looking at a very specific set of forms, and unfortunately, they deemed that bid non-responsive. So what we're here to discuss is re-awarding the project to the new, I guess it would be the lowest responsible bidder, which in this case would be Active Construction. Active Construction has worked on numerous projects in the city right now. Do a lot of similar type of work. Silver lining, their budget was only about $6,500 difference from Northwest Cascade from a financial standpoint. Very insignificant difference there. The agenda bill that I prepared had the similar language about WashDOT concurrence. We actually received WashDOT concurrence to award to Active Construction around WashDOT today. So good news there. So I guess what I'm providing information on is next week we're looking to bring this item forward to the board. Obviously, time is of the essence with construction. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Kind of an unfortunate situation, but that's kind of where we're at, and we'll keep the project moving forward as possible.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Atai. And council, I approve this going on general business next week for discussion and vote. So if you have any burning questions at the moment, otherwise just an advance heads up of why it's going to come to us next week. Yes, sir.
Is consent on the table? It's coming here to study session for presentation of the item.
Turn to my city attorney. Is that okay? No. Okay.
Yeah, because it'll be on the
It'll be on the
consent
consent agenda.
agenda.
Okay. Let me ask them, council, any comments, questions on this? So I'm personally found consent, but oh yes, I can.
Sorry, it's just my curiosity that's getting me. What is the utilization certification form and written confirmations that we're in agreement?
Sure. So the irregularity was on DEP forms and it's just enterprise. The contract requires that the bidders submit with their bid a utilization, DB utilization form. So when we advertise the project, we'll do that. WashDOT signs a condition of award for this project, 11%. That means 11% of the work has to be performed by DPE subcontractors. So the form they submit is a breakdown of who their DPE subcontractors are, what amount of money they're committing to pay those subcontractors.
So it's kind of a policy issue of possibly underrepresented contractors being involved in this.
Correct. So from a staff standpoint, we reviewed the certification form. They exceeded the condition of award goal. The issue was that there's secondary DP forms that are submitted that give a more detailed breakdown of the work that each DB subcontractor can perform.
That's what WashDOT is like.
So there was a total that was on the form provided with the bid that did not match the secondary certification form for one DB subcontractor. And even though they're meeting the goal, the way the contract is written, there's a regularity, and we will deem them non-responsive.
Sure. And active, that's a good representation. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks for explaining that.
And I apologize. I should have gone to you first, Public Works Chair, on this one. We're a little ad hoc, so my apologies.
No big deal. How many contracts do we have with ACI right now? More or less, ballpark.
They just finished Bryce and Brentwood culverts with Gunner. It's closing out. They're doing the Pine Road project. They just finished the Oyster Bay project. That was the sewer project for Oyster Bay. So they've been doing some big work in Bremerton for the last 3 years.
Thank you. And then my supplementary question is, does this bar Northwest Cascade from bidding on, future projects?
Absolutely not. No, and, you know, that's, especially with federally funded projects, there's a lot of, very specific forms that can be filled out a very specific way. And like I said, it's unfortunate. And, you know, ultimately, since WashDOT's the authority, the DDE and federal funds, it's kind of the fund there.
Well, it's a $7,000 difference. I would recommend consent.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Yep, Eric.
So Nick, what is the Northwest Cascade was notified that they're not getting a contract. They were approved last Wednesday. What is the timetable? Do they have a chance to appeal?
So the contract lays out a very specific bid protest process, but that's specific to protest after the bid opening. There's a time frame after the bid opening. In this case, obviously, you know, their recourse would be, you know, I think I was talking with WashDOT, file an injunction to prevent award, but that would be something that they would have to do outside of the scope of the protest procedures and laid out in the contract.
So I don't want to overstep and get into some exec session. They're given notice. This will be on the agenda for next week. So if they want to file an injunction, I assume they need to do so before next Wednesday.
Discussed it with WashDOT, and I mean, it's, you know, the deeming of the irregularities, it's very clear in the contract. It's unfortunate, but it's clearly an irregularity for the contract.
I'm good with consent.
Okay. I just want to check anything to add on there. Perfect.
Can
sounds cool.
I ask just a couple questions? And I apologize. This is part of the difficulty in attending remotely. I could hardly hear you. There's a lot of, you are right, President Coughlin. Even that little bit of paper shuffling, it's just such a distraction. I can't hear anything. And so
There. All right, any other comments or questions for Mr. Tyre, anyone else? All right, seeing none, any objections to consent then for next week? All right, seeing objections, this will go on consent for next week. Appreciate the diligence and getting us everything we needed and a little extra time tonight, but less time next week, so perfect. All right.
Great agenda pack for putting it together. Really good to see
We'll return to our regularly scheduled program with item B2. Managing engineer Gunnar Ferguson is here to present budget adjustment for the Pine Road Basin Stormwater Improvements Project, except it's not. It's
Oh.
engineer.
Sorry, I forgot.
City engineer Ned Lever. Welcome.
I told Lori. Gunner's on vacation this week, and he was willing to come in and present, and I'm like,
Oh.
stay home, I'll take care of it. This is a pretty simple item. We've got the Pine Road Basin project. We have active construction on that project, and they're just getting to the point of getting through the pavement restoration and paving. We had $600,000 allocated to the project for paving, and 120 of that has been spent on design, and then there was 480 for construction, but that was for half of the roadway paving. After getting into the construction, seeing the impact of the roads, we'd really like to pave the whole road. So in order to pave the whole road, we need another $210,000 of budget to be able to do that. So this is an agenda item for a budget adjustment, and the $210,000 comes from TransCap, and it's the residential streets part of TransCap that it would come from, and from that fund balance, which if you want a number, you got to ask Mike Riley what that is, but it's my understanding we have plenty of TransCap fund balance to cover this. And then what we'll be doing is leaving basically almost new streets for those two residential streets. So that's what we're asking for. We need a budget adjustment, and that's where the money would come from. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Questions or comments, council? Yes.
This came through Public Works and we liked it. I was just wondering, under fiscal impacts, it mentions the residential street fund. Does that exist in some form?
It used to exist, and now
Yeah.
that's been rolled into the TransCap. And so Mike Riley, tell me when I need to be corrected, but it's my understanding that it's been rolled into the TransCap fund, but it is constrained by like the TBD dollars or the CARTAB money that comes in for that is supposed to be directed for residential streets. How did I do, Mike? Pretty good. Okay, thanks.
I'd particularly like to compliment Public Works on their graphics that accompanied this agenda item. Those are really specific and impressive.
Right, thank you.
No further questions.
Perfect. Yes, Jennifer.
Hey, so, well, the budget adjustment just came through Finance and Parking yesterday, and we gave the head nod for it, just so y'all know. And I mean, and like Council, I just want to echo what Councilman Walker said, like the pictures speak for themselves. There is some, I mean, there's no patching over, you know, what, a giant, what is that, 5-7 feet deep? I can't even tell, but it's taller than a man or a woman who's working in there. And so thank you for taking care of my hood. That's all.
Excellent.
I'm just really glad to see road repair, you know, under another project. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really good leveraging opportunities. So thank you for being proactive with that. And yeah, budgets are going up, costs are going up.
So some of the other things we've done is that we closed sidewalk gaps and we added some ADA ramps. So it's not just paving that we added for the $600,000 that was originally budgeted. It's sidewalk improvements and intersection improvements in the neighborhoods too. So.
Any other comments, questions? All right, seeing none, any objection to consent? Perfect. All right, this will go on consent agenda for next week. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Right.
Have a good night.
Good night. Next up, we got items B3 and B4, be presented by Water Utility Manager Cami Applebeck. Item B3 is a resolution to adopt the City of Bremerton 2020 Water System Plan. Item B4 is resolution to establish water use efficiency goal for the City of Bremerton water.
That was. I'll just leave that.
Okay, continuation from last study session on this presentation.
And I will need to share my screen.
Perfect. And let me see if we figured out how to grant access. This should be good. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Okay. All right, thank you. And good afternoon, still afternoon, yes, for 10 more minutes. Just a reminder that these two items are coming forward as a pair. And last week, but last study session, we really spent more time talking about the water system plan update and just an introduction to water use efficiency goal setting. And I told you I would come back today with more a conversation around the efficiency goal setting. So that is the purpose of today's presentation. So water use efficiency goal setting is a requirement, one of the many requirements of the 2003 Municipal Water Supply Efficiency Requirements Act, otherwise known as Municipal Water Act, and the 2007 Water Use Efficiency Rule. And these regulations have some pretty comprehensive requirements. I've summed them up in this table here. The one I want to draw your attention to is the one that's highlighted in yellow. We are required to establish measurable water use efficiency goals using a public process. And this is normally done in conjunction with water system plan updates. So WAC 246-298-30 says goals must describe measurable outcomes in terms of reduced or maintained water production or usage, be set in a public forum that provides opportunity for consumers to participate and comment, and be reviewed by City Council, who will consider all comments received. At the beginning of June, we kicked off our public process. We posted public notices in the Kitsap Sun that ran from June 4th to the 6th. We also posted a public notice on the State Department of Health public forum webpage. We sent out social media notices on June 5th. We set up a kiosk in the lobby downstairs, which you may have noticed. That was set up on June 5th, and we will leave that up until a goal is in the water system plan is adopted. Right now, we're hoping that will happen on July 5th. We also created a dedicated web page and made these materials available to the public for viewing and commenting. We released a survey, both at the kiosk downstairs and online on that dedicated web page. That was available for the public from June 5th to the 16th. We then scheduled study sessions, June 14th and 28th. And then the official public forum will be the council meeting scheduled on July 5th. So to give you a little bit of history and background on water use efficiency for the Bremerton community, even prior to regulatory requirements, the city water system really emphasized water use efficiency in the early 90s. We started out with a program, and you can see that it was a very effective program in educating the public and reducing water use in the community. We've kind of highlighted as well where you see there's several peaks and valleys. That's to be expected with water use. If you have drought years, sometimes you'll have more demand than you would at other times. Starting in the 2000s there, about 2006, you see that there was this dramatic drop that can be accounted for just with efficient appliances or fixtures and whatnot, toilets and whatnot being available that really reduced water demand and just more effective education outreach. And of course, the economic downturn, we marked that there, and we all remember it seems a long time ago now, right? We've been through a pandemic, but there was an economic downturn in 2008 and 9 timeframe. And of course, so money was a little tighter. They were looking for ways to save. Likely they were watching their water use at that time. And since then, it's kind of been up and down. You see a peak where there was a warmer, drier summer, there was water use, but it's been pretty consistent that it's kind of bounced between about 137 to about 143 or 150. It's been stayed within that range. So overall, our community does quite well with water use efficiency. So I just wanted to share that. So based on our historical use and current use, and we proposed a goal of 160 gallons per day on a running 3-year average per single family household. And the rationale for that is that residents and homeowners comprise more than 92% of our metered connections, and they are the large portion of, or the largest target of our education and outreach. The current level of residential use is coming in average about 142 gallons per day per resident. Is excellent. And well below our previous goal that was set in 2013 of 180 gallons per day. The proposed goal does represent an 11% reduction over the previous goal, and to demonstrate the city's dedication to maintaining the conservation advances that we've achieved, and still trying to obtain a little bit of improvement. We can always improve, right? And the proposed goal remains below regional averages. I think I shared it in the last study session, just a reminder. Again, we are at about 143 gallons per day per resident. Kitsap County area is about 288, and Western Washington region is at about 220. So our community is doing very well compared to others in our area. So now I'm going to share the survey results for you. This is the public comment that we received. We had 29 responses to our survey. That was actually 2 more than we got the last time we did a survey. So we were pretty happy with the response. 20 of those were homeowners, 5 were business owners, and 4 of the responses came from customers who both owned a home and a business in our community. And on average, the customers that responded have been consumers for on average 13 years. So we had quite a spread though. We had everything from less than 1 year to almost 50 years. So we had quite the spread. 59% felt that the proposed goal was appropriate. 17% felt that it should be more strict. 21% felt it should be less strict. 3% did not answer the question. We asked consumers if they had a goal that they would propose. One of the suggestions we received was 250 gallons per day. I can share with you that regulatorily we can't go backwards. So, but I will share that that was a comment we received. And one suggestion seemed to indicate we should calculate with typical water fixtures and appliances used and set that as our gallons per day, which would be, I guess you could attempt to do it, but it would vary quite a bit. It would be hard to put a number on that. All of the other comments we received did not propose language that would meet the requirements of defining a goal. They were mostly concerned with water rates. And so those were included in your packet. I kept them in the language in which we received them. So you see them without any touch up or any interpretation in it. You're seeing it just as we saw it, but there was concern about rate. This goal setting does not affect rates. You as a governing body can choose to set rates that would encourage efficient water use to help us reach our goal. But this process does not set that. That's a separate budgetary process by which you would do rate studies, look at rates, and set appropriate rates. So again, based on the input that we received, we are bringing forward to the proposed goal to maintain water use per single family household to below 160 gallons per day on a running 3-year average. So we'll take any questions that you have.
All right, comments, but, and, I just want to triple check, we can put each of these items on consent agenda, does not require a public hearing next week. Okay. Questions, comments, council?
I could go after you.
Let's go Denise and then Anna.
I'm wondering, it seems like a natural increment, you know, that it's going down in. That being said, you know, I wonder what the harm would be in setting it 150 if we're under that right now. I mean, it's aspirational. I like goals that push me. And setting a goal that we're already meeting easily, it seems, doesn't seem like much of a goal. It seems too safe to me. You know, it's a goal is aspirational or what we think it should be. You know, I don't know. That's where my head is right now. And I just thought I'd throw that out. But I'm, you know, other than that, I'd be fine with it.
And just to clarify, you have that option. As policy making body, you can take your public comment, you can take your ideas and your information if you want to set a different goal you may. You know, it should, you know, obviously like all goals should be achievable, it should be measurable. But yes, that's certainly your prerogative.
Anna?
I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Hey, good afternoon. So you mentioned that your 92% of your customers are residential, of the number of
The
customers?
connection, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a 92% of the demand, it's just 92% of the connection
Yeah.
are residential. Yeah.
So I was wondering how, for example, a customer like the city of Bremerton, how much does their use? What percentage?
That is a very good question, and I can get that to you if you're okay with that. I can bring that to you, or as you know, if you prefer, I can email that out to everyone, however you prefer. But yes, I can share that with you.
That would be really great. And I'd like to rapidly assure Parks Director Elevado that I am not proposing that we have drought tolerant golf courses. Okay. So, yeah.
I would like to speak to that because we have a very robust water conservation program.
All right, thank you. So I was wondering, the 29 people who responded to the survey, I noticed that I think over 10 of them, am I right there? I use rain barrels, 21% of them. So that's a pretty specific demographic. I was wondering why, since the water bill goes to water customers, why there was no survey included in that?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. This seems like a very specific demographic, the 29
Yes.
respondents. These are people that are geeky, if you will, about water use and water conversation. People who love the topic, which is great. But I was wondering why you didn't, instead of having an online survey, why you didn't perhaps put a survey in the water bill.
So we did through the public notices that we put out early in June. We mentioned that it would be available in paper copy at the kiosk downstairs. And that table would stay set up for 4 weeks. So there was opportunity for those who are online surveys to come in and fill out a paper survey. And, you know, we took all comment as we had received on our website. We had, you know, submit comments here. So, but that is, you know, that is the timing was such that there was no bill at that time to put it into that bill, but that is a good comment for next process.
Okay, so almost done. Just a clarifying question. So the public survey, there wasn't time to take advantage of the monthly water bill?
That is, I believe that is correct. Yes. Yeah. Okay. We did try to, that's why we tried to put out the public notice in the newspaper, which we find that the demographic that you're talking about that usually is more comfortable with more traditional methods of communication. Usually they're reading the newspaper. And so we thought that that would be the way to reach anyone who's not comfortable going online.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't referring to any demographic in particular, just I figured people who use water get a water bill.
Yeah.
That was it. Thank you.
On to Director Quinn.
Marie King. The question I have is, what is the penalty if we're at 160 and we go over? Is there a penalty whatsoever?
Not specifically, but we would have to explain. We do have a water use efficiency plan, and when we update that with our next water system plan, they would be looking for us to do some significant improvements. If we did not meet that goal.
So a suggestion was maybe we bring it down. So I'm just kind of thinking maybe I don't want to bring it down because there could be some repercussion. The other thing you mentioned that Kitsap County, I think you said there's like 220 gallons, something like that per household.
Mm-hmm.
What was the number?
288.
Okay, it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And we're at less than 160, 143,
Mhm.
whatever the number was. I'm kind of trying to figure out why, and I'm thinking Kitsap County compared to the city, would it be true that we have smaller homes and smaller households, and therefore it's more likely than not if you're in the suburbs, you may have larger households and then hence more water usage and also more irrigation because you have bigger lawns. So the reason I bring that up and why I'm hesitant to handcuff ourselves at this point, unless you think it's a great idea, to less than 160, is we have a whole bunch of new developments coming out with good sized homes, not big yards, goodness gracious, those days are gone, but big homes with arguably families. And I'm just wondering, if you lower it, I'm comfortable with what you have. So that's all I'm throwing out, and maybe see how this growth kicks in and see if it affects our water usage, and then go from there. We look at this in 3 years again.
It'll be another 10 years.
For the goal?
Yes. Well, let me back that up. We can decide to do it more often. We can decide to come back and set a goal. Minimum, we update it every time we update our water system plan.
And the other thing is that, as you know, more than anyone in this room, we have a wonderful asset where water comes from. We are so, compared to other municipalities, we are super insulated from water shortages compared to probably just about anyone else in this state. I don't know if that's a strong opinion.
I think that is factual, yes.
So I'm comfortable with 160. We are doing our part. I'm good with 160.
I was going to agree with Councilmember Younger. 160 seems fine to me, specifically because you already let us know what the reduction looks like, even taking into account climate change. So I'm comfortable with, I guess, for future councils, I won't be there. Is there a possibility to add a prorated rate or a kind of penalty rate once people go over the 160 to have an economic persuasion to or incentive to keep them at that level?
So again, for this process now, it's decoupled from rate setting, but that is an option when you as a governing body are determining what are appropriate rates, and if water use efficiency is on your mind, and as a whole, there are different rate structures that can not just like penalize big water users, but can reward those who are the intent today was not to do that. We did see that concern in the comments that is setting this goal going to penalize us because it is an average, right? It doesn't represent, it doesn't say every house has to meet 160. It says on average per single family residence.
But if we ever got into a situation where, hey, actually climate change a lot more rapidly, we need to really buckle things up. That's something that future councils could do is split the rate like that. Okay.
Yeah, this council or future council. Yes, that's your prerogative.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll thank you for the presentation so much. I grew up in Southern Arizona, so water conversations, I feel like I hit over the, hit as a kid with that one, but it is lucky to be up here, and not that we shouldn't keep an eye on it, but we are surrounded by water, both in the air and the sea. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I appreciate the discussion about setting it too low, because I really do like to, let's be proactive with our goals, but yeah, hearing the discussion, I think the 160 to me sounds good as well. Perfect, all right. Let me ask if council is good with consent for both of these items, with no other questions, concerns, seeing thumbs up. Is that a thumbs up or a?
Real quick one.
Comment, yep.
I'd like to thank both Water and Public Works, because part of this reduction comes from the finding of leaks, and yeah, that's it.
All right, then we'll put items both B3 and B4 on consent for next week. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Hasselback, for the really thorough presentation. All right, next up we have item B5, goods and services agreement with North Coast for the purchase of 3 variable frequency drives for lift station CW-1. Wastewater manager Eric Burris is here to present.
Oh, good evening. Yeah.
Good.
CW1 staff was informed earlier, several months ago, that the existing VFDs will no longer be supported after July 2023. Wastewater staff procured a quote with the North Coast for 3 PowerFlex AI 755 VFDs and associated electrical components for the sum of $126,587.34, including applicable Washington State sales tax. The new ones are going to be a direct replacement for the old ones, just kind of like a real model. So that's all I've done. Any questions?
Council questions, comments? So, I don't know if this came to Public Works or not.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
No, she has a question.
I'm looking for the page, so.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what you just said, Eric. Sounds like a version of Full Time with Tim Allen. Whatever. We know what I'm talking about. That show hasn't been on for years, so. Some whatever model you said, all that. Okay, variable frequency drive, I think is what you called it. Right. What are we talking about? So we got a pump that goes down to the pump station. Is that what you're talking about, or is what's going on?
So this is a somewhat of a controller. What it does is it allows, it's kind of a cruise control for a pump. Without a variable frequency drive, you set your set points for low level, high level, and the level will come up to the high level, the pumps will come on, bring it down that, and then it'll shut off.
Yeah.
The variable frequency drives allows that to keep it within that zone for as long as it can. And that what that does is the stopping and starting of the pumps is part of that, electrically, mechanically. So this cuts down on that, extends the life of the pump, is more efficient. It's just better overall. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's just
the pumps. Yes, yeah, ramp it up or down based on set points.
Kind of like people have fancy air conditioning or heat pump systems. They have similar things where they'll go on and then they'll stay constant. And that's cycle on and off. You don't want to go on and off. So I get it. And so you're going, so you mentioned that North Coast, the current ones no longer be supported. How long did you have them in operation?
They have been in that approximately 15 years.
15 years. Is that, so I'm thinking like in the software world, you got Microsoft saying we're no longer supporting Windows 7. You need to buy a new copy of Windows. Ka-ching. So do we have a similar situation with North Coast? Are they saying you can't get parts for them, or what's
that's exactly what they're saying? After July, they're not going to make any more parts for them. And something on these cooling fans, something as simple as cooling fans on these things can sully the whole process. And something as simple as a fan will no longer be available. So that kind of puts us in jeopardy.
So what is the business practice of your North Coast competitors? In other words, do they support their VFDs for a longer period of time? Because you're going back to North Coast. So begs the question, why?
It's gonna be about the same with any vendor you deal with. We go with North Coast because number one, it's a local vendor. Allen Bradley is a well-known, product. They've been good to work with, good support, getting parts, and in this case, letting us know, look, we're not gonna make these anymore. Some vendors will not do that.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's Allen Bradley is the name of the VFD and it's North Coast is the vendor.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and you're saying other VFD suppliers, people that make, companies that make them, they have similar sales practice and not supporting things after 15 years?
Yeah, it's, and some a lot shorter than that. There's, in that industry, there's been a lot of, I'm trying to say consolidation.
Yeah.
And, so Allen Bradley's a pretty safe bet.
Okay. And your other controllers are all Allen Bradley, or, because I know you were trying, for your pumps, you were trying to get all the same brand.
Correct.
Are you doing the same thing with your VFDs or what's going on?
Any other stations that, we're going to do, we're going to put in, we will want to put in Allen Bradley's. If there are some stations that interchange, we don't have to worry about a different brand. And it just, like I said, a local vendor as well, that's another great thing to have, because they're right there. We can go talk to them face to face if we need to. Did I answer your question? I kind of.
Yeah, and then I'm also wondering, you said, well, there was, I don't remember that, but that's kind of finding fascinating. Could you have bought some spare parts? That way, you know, oh, look, they're not going to support this anymore. What commonly breaks on these things? Let's go ahead and store a few of them, and then we're good for another 5-10 years. Does that cross your mind? I assume
that has crossed my mind, and we might do that with some other stuff. But in this one, like I said, at the end of the lifespan, and I don't know if any are available right now anyway. So this is just kind of a preemptive strike, trying to be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah. No worries. People talked about their sewer bills, you know, it's like, well, let's ask the question. So, okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions from council on this one? Quinn?
Just wondering what Fund 454 is.
That's in our CIP. We have a specific line item for this sort of thing.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Well, Anna.
Thanks. So the West Side wastewater treatment plant is doing an update, and there's 8 small projects associated that you brought to Public Works in May. Is this change going to affect any of those projects?
This is independent of those projects.
That's it. Thank you for finding somebody, and I echo Councilor Younger's suggestion of like stocking up on some spare parts this time. If you can get council to approve that.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the presentation. And I know this came to us because it's over the $100,000 limit, but appreciate all the documentation and the sole source justification, and great question and answer. So nothing from me except to ask council if consent is good. Any objections? Seeing none, this will go on consent for next week. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Burris.
Thank you.
Moving right along, we'll go to items B6 and B7 with presentation by Fire Chief Pat McGaney. B6 is Technical Rescue Mutual Aid Interlocal Agreement, and B7 is Intergovernmental Agreement for Emergency Management Assistance Compact and Pacific Northwest Emergency Management Arrangement. Welcome.
Thank you. Both of these items are just renewals. This first one is our ILA or interlocal agreement for the technical rescue team. And the big change with this one is the cost has gone up to participate in that to $6,000 a year, which we'll be able to make that adjustment in our budget, just with cost of supplies and everything else that has gone up. There are some other language in there that has been cleaned up to make it clear who's the tech rescue team reports to, which is the fire chiefs. That's the big issue with this one, is just the cost going up. And that's it.
Did it go through public safety? Just always ask a question.
No, we're
Okay.
meeting
Next week. Okay.
No, these both came.
Oh, these.
These two came, yeah. We talked about them, the actual document wasn't in because they were still.
Yes, but all, the content was discussed.
Okay. Any questions or comments on? Sorry, Chief, I'll make sure you got both were covered, B6 and B7.
Well, I'll go over the next one.
Okay, perfect. All right. So any questions, comments on B6? All right, seeing here none, folks go to consent for B6. I have none. Pretty straightforward. All right, this is B6 is on consent for next week. And B7, take it away.
So the next one is a interagency agreement, EMAC, which is if we deploy either in-state or out-of-state for any reason, typically wildland fires. This agreement will expire in November of this year. So I was just getting out in front of this one. There were no changes to the document except for the expiration date, which would be good for another 5 years.
Comments or questions on this one?
You know, just interlocal agreements are one of my favorite things to approve because I just think the sharing, streamlining of resources, all of it, you know, bringing your strengths of each agency to the plate, all of it makes sense. It's great. Anything we can do to build those, as far as I'm concerned, we need to be doing. Yeah, so thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I'll just ask the question of, this comes up every 5 years, how often really roughly would you say we've taken use of it or been called?
The EMAC agreement we've only really used once, and that's when we deployed to California. I think it was 2018. And that was what we call a type 1 response, which sent a pumper down, which you see running around every day. So we sent one of those down. Now that we have a brush, type 5 brush rig, we'll be able to deploy differently. We've already had 2 in Mason County brush fires that they've asked for. Our rig didn't respond just because it's not quite in service yet, but it would allow us to respond for those type of requests that we were never able to respond to. So you'll probably see more of those in-state than out-of-state, depending what happens. But yeah, we've only used it once, but it's an important agreement to have in place versus trying to come to council to get reimbursed post.
Perfect. No, that's fantastic. I'll echo the sentiments of nice to help our neighbors when we can, and nice to be able to get help when we need it. So that's excellent. All right, seeing no other comments, questions, any objection to consent for this one as well? All right, seeing none, this will go on consent for next week. Presentation. Thank you. All right.
Great.
Yeah, how are folks feeling? We could,
Brief break.
yeah, I think, you know, these next two might be a little in depth. So yeah, call a 10-minute break, reconvene at 6:30. All right, sounds great. We'll reconvene
She said happy.
Roger that.
All right, we are back, 6:30, call the meeting back to order. And we are on item B8 with City Attorney Kyle Finnell and Assistant City Attorney Michael Rea are here to present information-only discussion regarding proposed updates to BMC Chapter 9.32 entitled Unauthorized Camping.
Thank you. So I'm going to direct your attention in your packet to the publication prepared by MRSC and the Association of Washington Cities entitled The Homelessness and Housing Toolkit for Cities. It's the 2022 version. This is a periodic publication, and this is the most recent one available. For me, I downloaded the packet from the website, and it's at page 33 for me. And I did not include this as a mistake. I included it in its entirety because I think it's a really good visual reminder of what we're here to talk about and what we're not here to talk about tonight. And so you'll notice from the table of contents, it starts at page 135. Okay. And I'll give you guys all a chance to get there. This is a large document. There's approximately 60 pages, and it's divided into, there's an introduction, there's a section on funding, there's a section on homelessness, there's a section on affordable housing, tenant protections, and innovative collaboration, and then, of course, their acknowledgements and stuff. But the reason I wanted to include this is because if you'll notice, homelessness and the limits of enforcement under homelessness starts at page 8 of the publication. Is just one little line in all of these different topics. And a reason I'm pointing that out is that to sort of focus the conversation on the council's task of amending this ordinance. And as a kind of also a visual reminder that there's a lot of other work being done that you've undertaken, that you've supported with regard to these other issues, and that this discussion of the ordinance is just one piece of the entire process for affordable housing and addressing homelessness in our community. I certainly encourage you to all take a look at the publication in its entirety if you haven't read it before. But for the purpose of tonight's discussion, and as we go through this process of updating the code, we're really only going to be focused on the pages that are talking about homelessness and the limits of enforcement, and that starts at page 8. So if you could kind of go to that section, I'm going to talk about why we're here tonight. And I feel like this is a pretty good explanation of what's going on. You'll see when you get to the page 8 of this publication, it talks about various topics. And the first one that you see right there in bold is Martin versus City of Boise. That's a Ninth Circuit case. We're in the Ninth Circuit, state of Washington is. The Ninth Circuit declared it unconstitutional for the City of Boise to enforce its ordinance prohibiting camping in public places against people experiencing homelessness at times when there was no shelter space available. And so that was a case that a lot of cities on the West Coast, including, all the cities in Washington, were certainly taking note of, because that ordinance that Boise had was very similar to ordinances that are in place all across the country. And so that's what the court ruled was unconstitutional. However, the court did set some limits on the scope of its decision. And if you notice right there in the middle of that page, it goes into a list. It goes 1, 2, 3, and that's really what I want to talk about. And there's 4 things. It doesn't cover individuals who have access to adequate temporary shelter but choose not to use it. So the focus of the decision is on involuntary houselessness, homelessness. It is not, the scope does not extend to people who simply are making that choice to not access temporary shelter. Additionally, when shelter is unavailable, an ordinance may prohibit certain things at certain times or in certain locations. And we're going to get into that later when Michael talks about what other cities have done in response to this. Additionally, an ordinance can prohibit obstructions of the right-of-way or erecting certain types of structures as a part of an ordinance. And that an ordinance is consistent with the Eighth Amendment, and whether it is will depend on whether it punishes a person for lacking the means to live out the universal and unavoidable consequences of being human. And that's the quote from the Ninth Circuit. The city of Boise did petition the Supreme Court for review. That was declined, and so the Ninth Circuit law stands. There was another case that is not mentioned in this that came out more recently. It was at the end of 2022 that reinforced a lot of the holdings in Martin v. City of Boise. And it's my understanding that they have petitioned the city in that case, which is Grants Pass, has petitioned for additional review by the Ninth Circuit, and the decision has not been made on that yet. So more to come, but in the interim, really what we're here to talk about are these 4 points. And that's kind of going to be the focus of this exercise of at what point are we going to limit the use of the public areas, public right-of-way, parks, that kind of stuff, public property, public space, and how it interacts with those who are experiencing homelessness. I did want to just, if you go onto the next page, and this is at 145, there's also discussions on searches, on vehicles. I'm not going to be touching on that too much, but I did want to draw your attention to panhandling regulations, which is it's my page 146. You might recall that last year we did deal with this already. We repealed our section that we thought was not in line with the holding in Willis. And so the council has already been undertaking this work. And this is just an extension of that work continuing to go forward to make sure that our codes are in line with case law. And so to help you with that decision, what we have planned for tonight is that Michael's going to talk about what other cities have done in response to these decisions and how they've revised their codes. We've got examples from City of Longview, the City of Lakewood, as well as City of Portland, which had a really publicized revision to their code in recent weeks. And then those are certainly not the only ones who have done updates. It's been pretty common for cities to be looking at this. Our plan is to talk to you about those, answer questions. The item is currently set for the 5th for public comment only. We are coming at you with a proposed ordinance. We really are hoping to draft this with you guys with input from the public. And then we would come back to a study session on the 12th, talk again about what we all learned from the public comment piece. At that point, Michael and I will start getting the ideas together of what this council, this community wants to see in an ordinance. And then my goal would be that we hopefully have at least something then to consider for presentation on the 19th, but certainly opening up to other ideas and timelines if the public comment deems that that's what's required for this. So that's kind of the introduction. Before I kick it over to Michael to talk about the specific examples, does anyone have questions, or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll take questions, comments on that proposed process or the intro. Yeah, I'm sorry, I saw Quinn's hand first.
Sure. And I'll defer to Lisa's chair of the.
It's really not through public safety, so.
Yeah, but this was one thing that, one of the things we talked about, I guess, and that's a good comment, why this isn't going through the committee, is it really touches on so many different departments and whatnot that we thought council as a whole was the best place.
My question was, so I know that the Supreme Court denied cert from Boise's appeal. Are there any circuit splits? Are we anticipating that the Supreme Court might take this issue up?
I don't think that the other circuits have had a case go up where they've reviewed it, and I'm not 100% sure. I know that if you read the dissent in the most recent Ninth Circuit case, I would encourage you to read it. It is definitely that it basically says that it should be heard en banc, and that if not, then appealed. And so I don't think that there's any circuit splits right now that I'm aware of. I know that other states are going completely opposite, completely different directions. And
I would imagine.
Right. Yeah, I had heard that Tennessee had proposed making it a felony to camp in public space.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I guess my next question is, for these elements that the Ninth Circuit kind of carved out as exceptions, other than the second case that you mentioned, has there been any ordinances testing the ability to
Right.
within the frames without violating the amendment?
So there have been, I guess, no, not directly on the nose, I guess is what I would say. The approaches are definitely locally crafted. And so what I haven't seen is like a model ordinance come out, which sometimes there are. Like, for example, when the Supreme Court decided Reed v. Town of Gilbert and required basically every sign code in the country to be amended, there was, it was a local process, but at the same time, there was kind of a model ordinance. I haven't seen that. This has definitely been each community sort of looking at their situation and what works best for them and crafting an ordinance to go along with that. And you'll see from even looking like Lakewood and Longwood View, which aren't even that far apart, right? It's pretty different.
That's good for now.
All right, Denise and Jennifer?
I'm feeling a little twinge of discussing this, moving forward with this, when we're hearing from the public all the time that we are not providing adequate services, toilet, whatever. We just heard from the library that they're, the closure of their building. I hadn't even thought of the impact other than programming that they provide, cooling, shelter, and of course, restrooms. And so while I'm really interested and want to move forward with this, with a good, robust discussion and all of that, I just have to call it out that this is, I think this could be perceived as, I don't know what the right word is, ironic or whatever, that we keep hearing about providing more services for the homeless, but we're discussing, really not criminal, but taking public action around camping and encampments and everything. So I want that on the record that we really need to, before we get any more aggressive, if we are going to move in that direction, we better know what we're doing as far as providing the adequate support. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to what you have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor Fry. That was a little bit of what I was going to say, but also, Kylie, can you tell me, you said that there were 4 things that you were hoping to discuss. I guess I'm confused by how you want to frame this discussion and what you want to focus on. I was going through the packet and it was like page 5, but no, it's actually page 140, whatever. So I apologize. I just wasn't able to keep up on all that.
Sure.
You said there were 4 items you want us to talk about. Or you want us to
sure.
frame? Okay.
Sure. So in this MRSC AWC publication, it's on
Which page? I'm sorry.
144 of our packet, but it's page 8 of the publication itself.
144, page 8. Got it.
It's everyone, I downloaded mine from the internet. I think sometimes it's, yeah, but, and so on that initial page, it has the title at the top, homelessness and the limits of enforcement. There's like 3 columns of text. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in the middle column, if you go down kind of midway, it says, however, in footnote 8, the court set forth some limits on the scope of its decision. And these 4 elements are where cities are adopting codes that are in harmony with the decision and not running afoul of the holding in Martin.
I am just so hesitant to even have this conversation because we have not even, we don't, I mean, I'm just speechless that we haven't figured out services or that like our administration hasn't figured out how to have shelter space, like where, and I mean, like, I get that there's like some sanitation and some nuisance like going on and that there are actually houseless individuals who are being preyed upon, but I just don't even, I feel uncomfortable having the conversation without having additional resources in place for these folks. Okay, but I see where you're talking about. Thank you for directing me to the correct page. I'll continue my thoughts later.
Thank you. And just one thing before we continue, from my end, looking at the current Bremerton ordinance, so I just want to make sure I got it correctly, that the current ordinance as it exists in Bremerton is basically no camping anywhere, anytime, for any reason. And so no matter what action we take, it would be a more lax policy.
Right. Right now, our code prohibits camping anywhere all the time. That's not okay. And what the Ninth Circuit is saying is that you can't have a blanket prohibition anywhere all the time. You have to specify, you can, however, specify certain areas as being no camping anytime, or you could do a time restriction because the Ninth Circuit focused on the act of sleeping, not just, and Michael will talk about that. Portland kind of took that approach recently. And so that was why I was talking about that. When you'll see that, particularly point number 2, even when shelter is unavailable, an ordinance may prohibit sitting, lying, or sleeping outside at certain times or in certain locations. And so that mix of times and locations is where certain cities have revamped their code so that it is not as broadly prohibited and instead is narrowly tailored to the uses in their community that they've identified.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. All right, let's I think you're good to move ahead to Mr. Reyes. Or did you have a that round of the process?
I did, please. I guess my first question is the phrase choose not to use it, as in the first bullet point, number 1, under footnote 8. It does not cover individuals who do have access to adequate temporary shelter, but choose not to use it. We have a great many situations in the city of Bremerton where it's determined that those who are undergoing a behavioral or mental health crisis are not considered competent to make a choice of, for example, to stop screaming, so on and so forth. So I'm wondering about how that relates to this.
Sure. So I think what you're asking about is would the court take into consideration a person's competency in determining whether or not their exercise of not going to shelter? And I don't think in the analysis that the court was looking at and in the choosing not to, didn't specifically look at that element. It was more about whether or not the person had a place that they could go. And if they did, then the city was then at that point, I guess, able to enforce their ordinance against that person, because the 8th Amendment, so it was not implicated when the person had a choice in the matter. It was the lack of shelter space and having no choice but to go to sleep where they stood or where they, because there was no other place for them to go. A separate issue though would be if I guess free from the 8th Amendment restraint, the city then prosecuted that person, their lack of competency could then be an issue in the criminal prosecution that would result in a dismissal. And so that is certainly a possibility, but it's also, I don't think that the issue of competency, it certainly wasn't what the Ninth Circuit was looking at in this context.
Okay, thank you. be right with you. Okay. It further says that outreach personnel, that it is important that they be present during encampment removal. Do we have such outreach personnel?
Right, and so that is on the Levin case, and that has to do with due process requirements for removal of unauthorized encampments on public property. The outreach personnel, there are some resources that do that, but the focus of that decision was really on the posting of a notice indicating an intent to clear an area, and then holding on to the property, and then allowing a person the opportunity to come and get it. I did see that in there, but and Michael, I'm not sure if you're super familiar with the Levin Holden, but I don't recall that presence of outreach personnel as being a part of the due process analysis, but maybe more of like best practice.
I think I agree. I think it's more of a best practice. And I guess I won't speak on what ability we have to do that right now, but there's been a recently enacted policy regarding encampment cleanup. That is more in terms of abandoned encampments, but it does provide for posting and the potential outreach also.
Okay. So to echo comments made by other counselors, I can't believe that we've been talking about this for years, and we have no mechanism to offer even an unused field or parcel and a simple portisan to people who have nowhere to live. I'm so sorry. Does this council have the power to create such a place on city-owned surplus land, for example?
So I might defer Michael's presentation to some options that will come before us with that.
His presentation is on options on ordinances on camping. And that's, I guess, I think if you guys as a group don't want to consider a camping ordinance, I was just going off, it's on our goals. Creating like if you look, this publication actually has sections on safe parking programs, authorized mitigation sites, micro shelters, hotels into housing, tiny houses, all this. So like if the council wants to not do this, then I'm just trying to tell you that those are on, that's what I'm talking about. Like the camping ordinance is just one little piece. But there are obviously other things. If you look, Bremerton's even on here on page 45. Like we got a nod from this publication for Pendleton Place, which is like 70 beds.
If I could add to that, Heather, and Council President Coughlin, you previously raised what our current ordinance says. So on its face, that the ordinance is potentially problematic. And so that, I think that's a big part of the reason to at least make some amendments to it, so that it is in line with this newish case law.
Can I just?
Yeah, you told the floor.
Yeah.
But
So is the answer yes?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Does this council have the power to create a place perhaps on city-owned surplus property where such a tent city or the pallet housing that's being used in Everett, does this council have the power to create that?
I think the council would have the authority to dedicate like budget funds to that. There's nothing currently in the council budget to do that. If you look at some of the examples in the publication, it gives some estimations of what the cost of running those programs are. But I don't think that, like, just instead of doing this within the next, like, 4 weeks versus like starting a new program like that, I think that would be.
I was just seeking the information.
Yeah, I think it would be like a budget.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, let's go to, Michael.
Thank you. So I just, so, I mean, this is the hard stuff that we have to deal with, and to say we don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it either. And, you know, we also have folks, residents and business community owners also asking us to, you know, solve some of these problems. And I also just want to make a note that, like, Bremerton's not the only place that's struggling with this, right? Like, this is not something that we've sort of, you know, dropped the ball on or something. This is something that, you know, is rampant in a lot of communities, and more so in the communities that care about homeless, unhoused folks. I recall, I think I just asked this question a couple weeks ago, that we did authorize like nonprofits to basically run, I believe, like a type of temporary tent city. And wasn't that for like 180 days or something? Yeah. So, I mean, so that is a solution. Nobody's stepped up to take that, and maybe we have to look at that. But I mean, to not get too far in the weeds, we're not going to solve in any meeting, any study session, we're not going to solve the whole problem. So what's in front of us right now is whether somebody should be able to camp in a public park for 24 hours. And you know, we know that our current BMC would say no, and we know that our current BMC disagrees with the Ninth Circuit. So we're saying, okay, you know what? If you need a place to sleep, you can sleep in the park at night. But during the day, it's going to continue with its desired use, which is, you know, playgrounds and families and whatever. And it sounds like the folks could hang out in the park. They just can't sort of set up. Well, you know, that's not perfect if you're living in a tent, but it's I think a decent compromise. And you know, again, we just have to look at the little piece of this problem that we're trying to solve, and really just focus on the issue that's in front of us. And there's we do this sometimes where we just start to try to fix the whole big problem, and you know, the scope tonight is smaller, right? So anyways, it's hard. I wish we didn't have to deal with this. I wish this wasn't a problem in our community. Anyways, so thank you for your time.
Since we've done a round on this, can I look for a thumbs up from council to let Mr. Rea continue with his presentation before we do more discussion? All right.
Jennifer, does she still have her hand?
Yeah, well, we've done one round, so I'm looking for consensus to move on to presentation before we have more
I'd like to hear
discussion.
I'd like to hear Vice President Chamberlain's comment.
Michael and Eric to either thumb down because it's the majority body.
Eric, Michael, thumbs up or thumbs down to hear Michael's presentation before more discussion.
Hear the presentation, please.
Okay. All right. I got majority. Yeah, let's get the presentation.
Right.
We'll
Thank
do
you.
discussion.
So, yeah, we thought it would be useful to look at what some other jurisdictions in the Ninth Circuit have done in response to this as well. The first one, and all the ordinances are in your packet. The first one is the City of Lakewood, and that takes the approach of putting up a tent, making a shelter area, camping, etc. Is always prohibited in certain areas, and that is what they have called protected waters. That's defined in their preamble of the ordinance. They also include a map that shows exactly where those areas are. So at all times, with no exception, nothing of any kind stand there. And then further on in their code, there is the sections touch on it. Well, essentially, it bans camping throughout other public property within the city. However, there's a pretty big exception to that. And what the exception says is that enforcement will be suspended if there's no available overnight shelter that can be used by that particular person. So they also include a definition of available overnight shelter. That's pretty common in jurisdictions that use that method where they suspend enforcement when there's no shelter available. They will almost always include a definition of what shelter space or available shelter space will be. As far as penalties go in that ordinance, there's no warning here, but the penalties do increase as the offenses increase in number. So for example, the first offense is there's no mandatory minimum penalty, but as it goes on to a second, third, and subsequent offense, it looks like there's a little bit of mandatory jail time as well as mandatory fines. So then another approach, the second ordinance, Longview, City of Longview.
I just want to take a pause right there just to temperature check everyone. So when we went back to that, what I was talking about, the Ninth Circuit said that there can be basically time and place restrictions. Lakewood is an example of a place restriction. So Lakewood took the approach that their protected waters, which are places that were for critical habitat, wetland type areas, that they were experiencing pollution related to illegal camping and was harming those areas. So they took the approach that those were going to be off limits all the time without regard for whether there was shelter space available or not. Then every other place in the city was only enforceable, or every other place that's in their code is only enforceable if there was shelter space available for that person. And that's where it gets to that element of it being in the choice or not to the choice of the person. And so this is, I was included just as an example of a city who did a location-based restriction and did and they chose critical habitats and things like that as the place that they were going to protect all the time from illegal camping with regard to shelter space. So I'm just kind of summarizing it, going and tying it back to what I started with and looking at those things. And so, okay, next one.
Yeah, so Longview would be the time restriction. So what they have done is between the hours of 6:30 a.m. and 9:30 p.m., no camping is allowed, and they list a variety of locations. It's pretty extensive. It includes any park, any publicly owned or maintained land, parking lot, or other publicly owned or maintained area, and also any city street. So I think you'd probably be hard pressed to find any area in the city of Longview that allows camping inside of those 6:30 to 9:30 hours. On top of that, they prohibit storage of property in that same area during those same times. So the practical effect would be that somebody can camp at 9:30. They can start to camp in those areas. By 6:30 a.m., then they would have to move all the things out of there and move them to a different location. So that would be the practical effect. The Portland ordinance, obviously not a Washington City, but it's still in the Ninth Circuit. And so that kind of takes a combination of all of those restrictions. What they do is they also have hours that camping is not allowed. That is between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. But on top of that, they have a variety of areas that camping is never allowed in. The use restrictions they have, so and there's potentially would be a lot to go through there, but that page and a half press release from the city does give a pretty good synopsis of the changes that they've made. And they restrict things that are, I think that they've deemed that are related to safety, so open flame, human waste, things like that. They have a section on penalties that, so they're trying, what they're doing is taking a kind of a phased in approach. Evidently, this is actually very recent, in the last several weeks. So as far as getting the word out on how this is going to work, they're doing community outreach, and then before any penalties will go into effect, there has to be proof of 2 written warnings of a violation of the ordinance. It's not really specified how that would be tracked, so there's potential difficulty there. But like I said, I mean that's a good example of an ordinance that kind of takes a little bit from each type of what's out there and applies it to our city. So those are good examples of different approaches that the jurisdictions have taken in response to this. And unless Kylie has anything further to add,
Right.
that's our additional questions.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the Portland ordinance, that if a person doesn't have an alternative access to shelter or housing because it's not available, then that person may camp, but they have to follow the time, place, and manner regulations implemented by the city. It's the enforcement is only when there is an alternative available, but even within that, the person is required to follow those time, place, and manner restrictions. And so that's fairly recent. And my understanding is it's been passed. I think my understanding is that they took like 5 hours of public testimony before they amended their code. It is supposed to, I think, start next month or this month. Next month.
I think, starting outreach
Now, I think it's outreach.
And the earliest enforcement will be in effect is the end of July.
And so, again, it's coming to you because of the Ninth Circuit decision, and that our current ordinance is anywhere all the time, never okay. So the least, I guess, and these are the ways that other cities are handling it. Another alternative would be to simply repeal it, like we did the panhandling ordinance. And then it wouldn't be in our code at all.
So, yeah, we'll go to comments and questions. But yeah, I did want to reiterate it wasn't our goals and procedures we all voted on to update this specific ordinance this year. And then the current proposal on the floor is to go to a public, that's not a public hearing, but to take public comment next week on this. You would represent this to the public, we'd hear public feedback, and then we'd reconvene a study session to discuss our options.
Right, and if we needed another, it's on our goals. Obviously, I think it's on everyone's goal, either this year or last year, to do this. So, and when I say everyone, like most cities are addressing this, we're not unique in that. If you look at, Portland just redid theirs, Lakewood's was 2 months ago. Everyone's sort of doing the same thing, and so. But it is definitely this is a change that's coming out with a lot of local variation.
All right, so let's go to Council. Jennifer, you want to go first and do a round of comments, questions on both the proposed procedure and on this ordinance?
So, and I believe President Coughlin, Councilor Younger, when we met, one thing we talked about is the Ninth Circuit Court. It doesn't even say that, like, it doesn't even say you can have a blanket, or it doesn't even say, you know what I mean? Basic coverings. And so something that I'd like to see us make sure of is that with whatever we approve for our camping, that we include wording that's above and beyond the Ninth Circuit and allow some sort of constructible in whatever area we choose. Another clarifying point, Councilor Goodnow, is that they cannot set up in parks. And Director Elevado will back me up on this. There's Parks Protection Act or something along those lines. that prohibits camping overnight in our parks. So those areas are not available for camping. And I just wanted to kind of point out something that just a simple search of these 3 areas. We have Lakewood, Longview, Portland. They all have houseless shelter availability, some with day centers, some with little tiny cabins. I mean, like, even close enough to Tacoma. I mean, they have lots of options. Maybe not lots of options in Longview, but there's an option through Salvation Army. So as we're crafting this ordinance, we need to keep in mind we have nothing in our city. So we have no options until an emergency shelter opens back up for inclement weather. That is our only resource for shelters. So we can't necessarily rely on it is, and I really super appreciate the research that both of y'all have done, Mr. Ray and Ms. Fennell, on humane ways to craft this ordinance, location-based, etc. But I do want to just kind of like, as we have this discussion, counselors, to just, again, these other areas have houseless shelter options right now today. They have a place that people can go to. So that's all I'd like to say about this as we think about it. Thank you.
Me bringing up the lack of availability of the bathroom for the folks out on MLK, public perception is critically important. And my concern is if we do this, and I think we should do it. I mean, we need to do it, and we can do it thoughtfully and craft a good ordinance, right? If we do this, however, at the same time as people are asking us, where's the bathroom? I'm embarrassed. I think it sets us up for some accusations of having our priorities in the wrong place. And it's easy, it must be easy to clean up an ordinance and really hard to get a porta potty. And I don't believe that's true. And if it is true, it should not be true. So this isn't for your department, Kylie. This is for the administration. Fix it. Fix it. Do something so that we can at least say we're doing something at the same time as we're doing something. If we do, and we're going to do this, it's going to trigger, I promise you. Just as I warned us about earlier, public perception about this. I know it's going to be there, and rightfully so, I think. This is an area that I think the administration really needs to step up to. And if for no other reason than us saying it's time and we're not going to do anything with this until that is done. I'm feeling really, I'm for this, but I'm feeling really uncomfortable with timing and the energy that we're putting into it. I don't know what else to do with administration to get them to do something.
Any other comments, questions? I'll go ahead and take my turn. And yeah, this is a tough topic all around. And I know we're here not to do the easy stuff, but to tackle the hard stuff. I keep saying that. And I really do appreciate the public perception, because this is it's a no-win scenario trying to tackle the issue of homelessness. We as a council are not going to solve the issue ourselves. It is a national, regional, hugely large issue. That said, I think we have identified some fantastic goals for our year in terms of affordable housing. We've allocated $500,000 for affordable housing just recently. We've been working with KCR and partners. I think the council has put a lot of priorities there. I do appreciate, though, the specifically talking about the MLK area and toughness there. And yeah, as a council, we can do budget and some policy, but for the day-to-day operations, we're with this administration. I really like the idea of just going and getting feedback from the public specifically on updating this ordinance. I personally will reiterate that no matter what we do, it is going to make our current ordinance less draconian, put it that way. So no matter what we do, we'll be more friendly to folks experiencing homelessness. But yeah, I kind of really want to hear from the public their thoughts, because I think we do have to make some really tough choices here. We have to get in compliance with the court. I think we do need some sort of ordinance on the books, one that is enforceable but reasonable and humane. So there. Quinn?
Yeah, this is an extremely difficult and uncomfortable topic, right? We've talked about marginalized and vulnerable populations at council before, and this is the most marginalized, vulnerable population in our society, right? I think we were elected and appointed to do hard things and make difficult decisions, and what is happening currently and has happened currently with the homelessness crisis, especially with cities just kind of taking a laissez-faire attitude to it, hasn't worked. We have, I've worked in downtown Seattle since 2015, and I've seen what has happened there when city council and the administration has just kind of taken a hands-off approach. Businesses move out, services move out. There's a negative outcome for those who are not marginalized and experiencing houselessness, and then there's also a negative, ultimate negative consequence for them as well. And so, as we are thinking about, where is this 10,000 for the bathroom that we have allocated, maybe it should be council taking the reins, making the hard decisions, and determining, okay, as a city, with the resources that we have, with the population that we have, where does it make sense and which rules make the most sense to us? Because we have heard a lot of public outcry, but we've also heard public outcry from folks that are really negatively impacted by just kind of the haphazardness of where camp and counties have shown up. So I don't think anybody on this council lacks the empathy or the humane decency that I've seen come out of a lot of different areas in the country, including the South, where they ultimately just criminalize and hide folks for being poor. That's not what we want to do. And I think trusting a very robust process with community input, and it might take a lot of open community inputs. It might take a lot of study sessions to at least try something, but what is happening right now, and us just kind of doing it, it's not working. So I appreciate legal letting us know that time and place restrictions are at least an option and tools that we have in our tool belt to help craft somewhat of a solution, with the goals of helping community and the community that is houseless. I don't think they have to be at odds. I think we can actually come up with some really good solutions.
Anita, there before I go to Jennifer for a second round,
Yeah, I guess I'll comment here. So I'm kind of soaking it in. You guys know I always do. So I'm soaking it in. I'm interested in hearing public comment, but I'm also looking at the ordinance when you have a chance to, maybe tonight or tomorrow or whatever, look at City of Lakewood's, the ordinance and where they all the whereas. I find it interesting. We're talking about I won't call it silly, it's important, but a $10,000 porta potty. City of Lakewood has dedicated 1% of its general fund to growing partnerships. So in other words, they're putting money in the game. The government would be horrible to run anything dealing with. I'm sorry, but government's not good at stuff like that. I hope we're in agreement with that. Anyway, is growing its partnerships with local nonprofit organizations for the purpose of improving its coordination of existing services, including programs specifically related to improving lives on house residents of the city. And then it says, whereas in partnership with Pierce County and City of Tacoma, they allocated $1 million to the local housing institute. So, you know, they're going to say, okay, this is what we're doing. We still have a problem. And then you look at the ordinance and it's citing the case law, just like Kylie and Michael are saying, we've got an issue here. We've got an ordinance on our books that effectively, I won't say I'm not an attorney, but it appears it is not in line with the Ninth Circuit's opinion. And therefore, I have a sinking feeling that we don't enforce it at all is probably our current policy. I don't need to have an answer to that. But in any case, the city of Lakewood is saying, so look, we've dedicated this money and we've got an issue with the court. They kind of spell it out and they say, hey, we have some environmental concerns. They spell that out. Well, we have similar environmental concerns here. By the way, I assume we're all familiar with Lakewood. They are our comp. That's a military town. It's a little bigger than we are. Probably about 80,000 if I was going to guess, a little bigger, but very similar socioeconomic demographics, I would argue, the whole works. So you throw your Portland here, your wherever, Seattle here. No, Lakewood. Lakewood has done a lot of the heavy lifting. I'd like to know when this was passed. Michael, do you know when Lakewood was passed?
I want to say it was this year, within the last 2 or 3 months.
Okay, so maybe a little early, but I'd like to hear some of the feedback of the Lakewood experience.
March 20th, 2020.
To see how things are going. I know it's a little, but then I encourage you to go ahead and look at, because we're saying, oh, there's no shelters in the city. They talk about the shelter availability where they can, this stuff can kick in as far as no camping in parks or whatnot. Has to be within a 15-mile radius. And at first you say, oh, that's too restrictive. You can't, but the city has to move them, take them there. So I think they thought this out pretty good. Now I'm saying that, you know, people don't come after me with pitchforks. I'm saying I'm open to this. It's better than what we have. We need to balance both sides, like people are saying. And definitely, I think there should be more money in the game from the city. This talk about the porta potty is serious, but almost comical, really. I was going to say something. I'll refrain from saying that word. Anyway, so that's my thoughts. Like, we need to do something. So we paid the big bucks, do something. And we do control the purse. That's why I mentioned the money's got to come from somewhere. You get it from here. You want it for here, it's got to come from somewhere else. But, you know, that's our decision, our purview as well. It's interesting. So I'll look at the other ones that you mentioned in a little more depth, but I like Lakewood's. Again, I'm waiting to hear public comment and look forward to the discussion. But I really think you need to do something. You can't just say, oh, it's too complicated. Oh, it's, you know, we don't even have a porta potty or whatever. And we can do some proactive things like Lakewood did. And we need to address it. That's my opinion.
Kanana, you've not gone this round. Sure. Yeah. All right. Okay. So you can go for
it. So I've looked at all of these different ordinances and I do think that government is good at providing services. This has been my experience, and we are actually the legislative body of this government. This is not very quickly because it's not completely germane, but we need to figure out a way to set aside money and some mechanism and not wait until November when it's already starting to get cold. Back to the ordinance. I look forward to hearing public comment, and I look forward to this council incorporating public comment into the ordinance, not just checking the box.
Counselor Younger makes a really good point about Lakewood, how comparable Lakewood is. I'd also like to point out the extreme in the city of Portland, the number of times that, and the protocol for speaking to people and giving them written notice and the repeating the action. Sorry, I have nothing more to say.
Propose a quick second round, and then I'll look for thumbs up to go to public comment next week. So Jennifer, go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, agreed. I think we should look at the Lakewood ordinance. Again, they have an ongoing partnership with Salvation Army, which I don't think is always the best provider, but they seem to be the most common. And I'd like to know, I do also believe that nonprofits can have a good handle on things. I'm not always a fan of necessarily the churches, but when receiving federal funding, there are rules that go with that, or even state funding. I think I just want to kind of just let y'all know about a couple other ways that houseless folks get in trouble while camping right now. Okay, so it's not that it's completely not being regulated. I think there is a little bit of squeamishness around it right now by the police department, but there's still two other ways that they're able to regulate illegal camping, which is trespass. So if folks are trespassing, they're still being cited. So if part of their tent falls onto private property, that's one way that people are still currently receiving citations. The other way is disorderly conduct. So if it's daytime, which we don't really have an ordinance in place with times and so on. If it's daytime and they haven't moved along and they choose not to, they choose to keep their tent up, then they can be cited with disorderly conduct. So these are two mechanisms that are currently being employed right now to regulate camping practices. And so that's something for us to look at too. I think I just want to make sure that we have not only just like regular public comment, but also that we're able to have some kind of technical assistance that we provide to somebody, to an organization like the Real Team, so they can continually give advice on how a new ordinance will be implemented and where people can camp. And so partnering with these organizations, I think, is a lot more impactful than our public works, our police department. They have very specific jobs. I mean, they're, like they have, and thank you, Public Works, for providing some sanitation services, right? Like you're doing some cleanup, and super appreciated. But just as we move forward, again, one thing that I want to make sure of is that people can have a friggin' tent, and that they're given, that we receive some sort of, like, at least some sort of collaboration with an organization like the Salish Brew with the Real Team. I think this is probably going to take a couple of rounds of public comment. We might even be working on this ordinance until inclement weather happens again. And until then, I mean, I don't know where people are going to go, The last thing that I really want to say is that I do appreciate being reminded that right now we have an even more restrictive ordinance. And so I'm not necessarily a person that always cares about public perception, which maybe I should, I don't know. But the way that we really need to promote this is that our ordinance is extremely restrictive, puts us in a liability, and that what we're doing is not creating a more restricted environment, but a less restricted environment for our house individuals. So thank you. I appreciate all of you.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Councilman Younger. I've now looked into that Lakewood proposal or ordinance, and how do we get $1 million into that ordinance to give to, right? And how, if it's written into this ordinance that 1% of the general fund goes to coordination of services, and that $1 million is going to these organizations, let's do it. Let's at least talk about that. That should be on the table. Any part of these ordinances that you propose would be fodder for conversation. I'm not saying we do it, but it would sure be more palatable to me. I mean, Lakewood's got it written right in there. It's beautiful the way they balanced, that an ordinance usually doesn't, at least in my experience, it doesn't do that. It says you're gonna, do this, but this actually has the support built into it. So I'm excited about it now.
Yeah, I agree with your enthusiasm. Director Riley, what is our reserve balance right now? If you know. 7%. Okay. And so, yeah. So yeah, I agree. If we are going to do this, like, we can't just be like, nope, we don't want to see folks, right? Like, we need to create some sort of funding or some other solutions along with it. I think we're able to do that.
Sure, and one of the things that, and this is just kind of, if you look on page 181, Bremerton is actually already featured in this, and so this is the type of thing that would be in our whereases. Not to say that we can't add more, but just saying that this would be something that, what the city did here with the partnerships to create Pendleton Place, particularly for our chronically homeless that have addiction and mental health issues, would be the type of thing that we could list out in our whereases that has already been implemented. The same thing with the council's allocations and the budget. We have a lot of different partnerships. There's the respite center. There's there's a place to put those things, as well as anything that any new partnerships and things that get listed. So I don't have all those written out yet, but we could certainly include it, is what I'm saying. And that this is the type of thing, if you want to look at like how this could be worked into the whereases, like stuff that we've already done.
You done, Quinn? Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Any other comments, questions this last round? Okay, if not, I'll close out by, yeah, I think it is good to reiterate that a lot of the positives that the city has been working on, in terms of both affordable housing and addressing homelessness. Like, there's always more we can do. I'm also cognizant in the back of my head that Bremerton is the poorest per capita city in Kitsap. And we are home to the majority of folks experiencing houselessness. So I feel like we as a city, with the least means available to us, provide the most. And so I would also like to reach out to the other cities in the county to see what support we could get, and the state as well, and ideally federally, but we know it's not going to happen. But the state as well for resources for us as well. So I just want to keep that in the back of my mind, that Bremerton can't do it all by itself.
And to that point,
Sure.
I did want to add, so I speak to the Lakewood city attorney fairly regularly with friends, and one of the things that came out of the most recent Ninth Circuit decision was about whether or not partnerships among like cities and counties and cities and other cities were sufficient for whether shelter space is available. There is some language in that case that states, makes the comment city limits. And at first people were really concerned because there were already municipalities that had formed these partnerships, were contributing funds, but it was the shelter space was actually technically, not in their city limits. And I can say that while we don't have a definitive answer on that. It seems as if most cities are now taking that as what's called dicta and not particular to that holding, and that those are okay. I know Lakewood's partnership on the Lehigh, and it's mentioned in their ordinance. I believe that shelter space is actually in the city of Tacoma. So they partner with Tacoma. It's I think a partnership between Lakewood, city of Tacoma, and Pierce County. But the actual location is within the city of Tacoma. And so they have taken the position that that is, I guess, like we're close enough and within their region to be counted as one, okay for expenditure of public funds. It's helping their population as well. But it goes to the discussion earlier about partnerships and things like that. That I don't think that, at least most cities are now not as, or they're treating that as that those are still okay.
All right, so we'll take public input next week on this item, and then we convene for the next study session and continue the discussion. Well, thanks so much to both of you for really diving into this and presenting it to council. All right, we'll move on to item B9, which is an information-only discussion regarding proposed updates to council rules and procedures. And here to present is myself. Hey. All right, let me see if I can get this to display. Give me 1 second to navigate all the tabs I got open. And while I do that, let me just paraphrase. We last updated our rules and procedures, I think just a little over a year ago. I think it's always good to revisit them. Picked up a number of suggestions and comments from council throughout the year. And then as well, coming back from the AWC conference this past week, I also saw some other good suggestions talking to a bunch of different council members from other cities. So what I did is in the packet, there is a redlined version of changes I'm proposing, and then I do have a slideshow as soon as I can get it to share. Right, I know. We'll see, or I can just redirect folks to the packet. I have a hard time talking and navigating computer at the same time, so I'll give them a second. Anyway, so I got a slideshow, I'm just going through them.
Oh, okay.
Perfect, yeah. I'm never used to this version of Zoom on here, so I don't see a way to actually share just my own screen on the tablet. But
we have your presentation.
Yeah, if you got the presentation slides, perfect. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go through your rules, procedures, the next.
Yeah, I think, and yeah, proposed council is maybe I'll just brief what I'm thinking and then let folks mentate on it. And next study session we can pick it up since we're kind of long on time. Rather than diving into specifics of it tonight. Thank you so much. My God. All right. Appreciate it.
Hey, I just got there. It was him.
Okay, good. All right. So this is page 206 of the packet for anyone online as well. I'll just go through and brief on them. So the first one here is something that a couple other cities have done. I've talked to Attorney Fennell, but we could limit public recognition to 30 minutes. Again, this isn't on an item, it's just general public recognition. And then as we have time at the end, allocate additional. This would just be kind of a safety net in case we get a lot of people showing up to one meeting. The alternative is also say, gosh, we got 50 people, 30 seconds each. I don't think that's quite fair in my opinion, but anyway, just kind of a safety net so we can get to the business of the meeting and then take additional public comment at the end. The next one, this came from talking to other council members and also hearing, I know, frustration from multiple council members about, we get general comments under public recognition, why isn't the city doing X? Why did you do Y? And for council to respond, we're really waiting all the way until the very end of the meeting on our council reports and saying, oh, I want to address that person in my district that said this. And so what we could do is add just a quick 2-minute per council member, however many minutes per council member, ability to respond to public comment right after, public recognition, right after public recognition. So that way we can kind of get a response there. It's not a full back and forth, but the public speaks, we speak back. And that way it's right there before they, leave and don't stay till 9 o'clock. This is understandable. This next one, updating the consent agenda, public comment to be written only. Again, talking to Attorney Fennell. This would be totally in compliance with the OPMA. It's an option we can take. And this is in response to, we've gotten some excellent public comment on the consent agenda in speaking when we're ready to vote on the consent agenda. And the issue was brought up of, well, wait a minute, what's the process to be able to take into account that public comment on the consent agenda item? So this would limit it. We could pick the exact time and date. I would propose, noon the day of the meeting, get your written comments in. That way council can look at written public comments on the consent agenda. And then at the briefing or any time before the meeting, any council member could pull from consent to general business and say, oh, there's really good public comment here. I want to pull that down and have a full discussion on it. The last one at the end of that page, this would be just clarification. I don't think we actually have to codify it, but just for clarity, talking to Clerk Hoover and Attorney Fennell, we could take public comment when an amending motion is made, as we did the other week when Vice President Chamberlain made an amending motion. And we were able to get some more public comment. So I just want to codify that we have that ability, Council President's discretion. If it's something really small and tiny, you probably don't need it, but something big, I think it makes sense. The next page here, I think this will be probably one of the bigger discussion pieces, possibly, but my intent was to clarify the language that is currently in there on Rule 4. We've talked about agenda setting, to clarify that, one, to add, right now it basically says a mayor or council member may initiate, an item. I realize we've had some items from the court that are not listed in there. And so I wanted to clarify that, the judge and the court can also request items. And then to basically just make it clear that the same process can apply to mayor and judge as it does to council, and any council member, as we've been practicing, can bring an item for discussion or vote or proposal. So just take a look at that language and we'll discuss that more. Next one is just clarifying language, as is common practice at the moment, that council president can authorize exceptions to the bill policy. So for example, when I was willing to add the public works contract modification to next week or to today, and as is currently written, the council president can deny an item if it violates the agenda policy. Someone didn't submit an agenda bill and okay. But to be clear, the council president cannot remove an item or block an item from going on the agenda if it followed all the proper procedures. So we still have the council fallback of any member of council prior to the meeting can ask to remove something from the agenda. It only takes two to override and reinstate the agenda. Last two on this page, just clarifying language at study session as we've been practicing, that we can either say the council, we don't want to hear this item in the near future. We don't want to talk about it. We want more information and we'll talk about it next study session. Consent agenda sounds good, or we add it on a public hearing or general business, just to clarify those are kind of our options. And then the last one, talking to Attorney Fennell as well, I found some confusing language regarding a committee of the whole under the section of what committees we have and appointments are made. It's really another word for study session, but from my understanding, it was added back in the day as a precautionary measure, just to make sure we're legally covered, but probably not needed anymore. So I just recommend to strike that language for clarity. And then the last page, there's two other things I've heard talked about. The first one was talking about an abstaining vote. So right now in the council rules and procedures, any member can abstain on any vote for any reason. That's what we've been practicing. That's what we'll continue to practice if the rules don't change. But there are some cities, and it's also in line with Robert's rules and all that, that you can basically say, if you're going to abstain on a vote, you kind of need to excuse yourself from the discussion. And I'm thinking of when Michael and I basically abstained from anything with the lodging tax discussion, since we get conflicts of interest. So up front, I was like, we have a conflict. We'll see in 20 minutes when you're done talking about this, and abstain. And that otherwise, like this is Paul Bowes code, any council member who doesn't vote is treated as a yes vote. Pros and cons to this, but I just wanted to throw it out there. So I did not yet, I feel like this is made more controversial, so I did not include sample language in our rules and procedures, but I wanted to throw it out there.
And the last one is something I've heard, I think, discussed in the city for years, which is we currently, again, any member, for any reason, they don't have to justify it, can move any item from the consent agenda to general business. I've heard suggestions of requiring a second to do that. And this is, you know, the reason I think this has been proposed is a safeguard of if one council member wanted to move every single thing under consent to general business, how would we handle that? My research looking into what other cities have done is that Robert's rules really preserves the right of any individual to move it off consent to general business. So I also didn't include this because it seemed like nobody has come up with anything that support this. And I think we do have safeguards where if that were to happen, Robert's president can basically say, all right, I'm gonna, you know, we have enough majority to call for the vote. All right, we'll take the vote. You can have your no vote and we'll move on. So, yeah, so in this time, I'll just leave it there, mull on it, pick it up next study session. Yeah, no big urgency to any of these. All right, thank you all.
Not making a comment.
Oh, okay, just over, yeah, 5:22, we gotta go full round, so.
So I'm just noting that the agenda bill policy is contained in the packet.
Oh, thank you. Yes, no, okay, appreciate it. Yes. All good.
Can't get more innocuous than that.
I gotta be fair. I gotta be fair. Yeah, okay. Yes, so that is included in there to look over as well. All right. With that, we'll conclude our briefings on agenda bill items. Move to general council business. Like to invite Public Works Committee Chair Anna Mockler to provide summary and highlights of the June 20th meeting.
Delightful meeting of the Public Works Committee. I think it lasted about 41 minutes. I know, it was pretty great. Chris Mottner mentions that they've purchased an electrical vehicle, the one that we dedicated to M-Park. It's a Leaf. It's replacing a 2009 Toyota Veris. They got it cheaper than when Leafs were bought by the city in 2022. So there is some remote hope that prices are going down. The Pine Road change order, which you just saw, and then the Army Corps of Engineers, the permit came through. Did Fish and Wildlife make their 7/1 deadline?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty darn close. Really. Anyhow, so there is hope. This is to do with the outfall. So this might happen more rapidly than we had been hoping. Is that correct?
Yeah. We've got the permit on that. I believe there's going to be an agenda on that for a change.
Yeah. Like anytime you get a core permit, it's like hallelujah should start happening. Gunnar Fredrickson is working his magic with the contractor because this is a change order, not a new RFP. Hey, we looked at the 6-year transportation improvement program. They work very tightly with DCD. If there's anything more that anyone wants to know about this 6-year transportation improvement program, one thing that did come up at Public Works that I think we all found pretty interesting was the Transportation Impact Fund. We are the only municipality in the entire state of Washington that does not have a Transportation Impact Fund. They would create steady funding for building new roads and other infrastructure, perhaps for maintenance as well, but I did not inquire. And rather than going through the entire SEPA process and the environmental review and deriving funding from that, it would be a per unit charge. It would add certainty for developers. It would add certainty for Public Works. It would add certainty to the city's budget. We're replacing well 7. It was built in 1945. I think we already even looked at that. On July 12th, we will be looking at the wastewater comp plan update, which we have every 10 years. So if anybody wants to get a preview and check out the wastewater comprehensive plan, in draft. I recommend you get right out there and do for it. That's it. It really was that rapid.
Excellent. Hey, any burning questions on that? We'll move on to Finance, Investment, and Parking Committee Chair Jennifer Chamberlain to provide a summary of the highlights from June 27th.
Yes, we actually, as opposed to our previous meeting, actually ended a little bit earlier, which was lovely. One of the items, the Pine Road Basin loan amendment, I believe we talked about, that was, or we're going, well, here's the deal. I don't know that, that we're gonna have the information for that loan amendment right away. I don't think that was actually what was on our agenda. But I had hoped that we could have more specifics on that loan in the presentation when it comes up. And that loan amendment has to do with the fact that the change order that Councilor Mockler mentioned before was to separate the construction that was being done on Eagle Dib, the Pine Road Basin. But also, they were trying to loop in the oh gosh, Director Nucky, I'm gonna get it wrong. The outfall, Stephenson Canyon is outflow, Sheridan is outfall, got it. But that's just in shoddy condition. And I've walked past it, kayaked past it a few times, and it's just, I mean, it's gonna be a real dangerous project, but the reason that they had to separate those two projects was because of permitting. They could be held up by permitting that was being delayed for the marine project. Marine projects come with a lot of additional permitting, as they should, right? Water rights and so on. So they're going to be they're in negotiations with, is it ACI that has all of our contracts now? Not all of them, but you know, they're busy. But they're in negotiations right now, and trying to kind of negotiate. And I learned a new term, value engineering. And so basically, there could be a time where they're going to bring this item back to us and ask for like another couple $100,000 and making it $1 million project just for the outfall. And so, but it is in really horrible condition. It's very dangerous, giant rocks, et cetera, broken pipe, giant broken ferrous metal. So the other two things that we talked about are kind of looped into one. There is, and I thought it was going to be on the agenda, so my apologies when I mentioned there's going to be something to handle that. That was my misunderstanding. But there was at the 9th hour, a couple days ago, they found out about a TAP grant. Call for projects, and so so Public Works has submitted interest in a couple of projects. One of them is to get funding for the Naval Avenue Road Diet Phase 2, and then the other one is submitting an interest for a 6th Street rechannelization grant. I don't know if y'all have heard of that before, but so mad props to Public Works for seeking out some funding, you know, starting on that, because it is going to be an expensive project. But it sounds like they're hearing the people. And so they've submitted, doesn't mean we're going to get it. They submitted interest, but that's more will be revealed on that. That's it. Thanks. I think it's my longest finance report I've ever made. Sorry about that.
All good, all great information. Excellent. Good news. All right, not seeing any burning questions. I'll move on to inviting council members to regional other committee boards or meetings for highlights as well. I have two, but of course other folks should go first.
Hit it, Carl.
Went with the mayor and Councilor Mockler to the ribbon cutting for Mills Crossing on Saturday. It was delightful. Want to see those all over the country now. So that was great. And I do want to thank the mayor for all your support for that project and for all the others I know that are in the pipeline. And then we were able to go to the chamber luncheon today, and Lori Smith came with us. And I'm just going to do a shout out. I think we need to give that opportunity more to staff, you know, to go out and learn about what's going on in our community. She really enjoyed it. And she said she learned a lot. And she's been in the city for how many years? But yeah, sometimes I think it's good to get out, expand your perception. So that's it for me.
Perfect. Seeing no others? Oh, excellent chamber luncheon. It was nice to be there, and the mayor as well. Two I had was AWC conference last week in Spokane was fantastic. I could talk a long time about it, and what a great experience it was, but just a 1-minute summary is there was too many meetings to choose from, but I went to a few on civic engagement, a couple of walking tours. Spokane has transformed their libraries and kind of waterfront. That was really useful. Great conversation about getting youth in government, a youth advisory council, which I know is on our kind of goals and priorities. So that was really helpful. Another one on adapting Main Street, the changing retail environment, of course, business meeting as well. I did skip the sip and chat with attorneys. If you're afraid to ask your city attorney, we're here to answer questions. So I didn't feel the need to go to that one. So for the record, but nice to know it's there. Anyway, a lot of great stuff. I'll try and write up. And then tips for successful council meetings as well. So that was quite useful. So thanks, council, for sending me, and I'll try and write up some other lessons learned from that. The other more regional meeting was there was a Warren Bridge stakeholders meeting the other week. Talked through that one. There's a preferred alternative that Public Works has identified that I think will be coming to us next week. We went through some of the other alternatives that are on the table. There was also another public outreach meeting online the following Monday. At that one, it was learned that WashDOT kind of finally gave a firm answer on whether we could leave one side of the bridge unimproved completely or not, exactly as is. And the answer was no, that both sides would have to be updated to ADA requirements. And just doing my due diligence, I talked with Steve Rourke, who's the regional director of WashDOT, and talked through all the possibilities, and confirmed absolutely that is the case. So would have been nice to have that from WashDOT a year and a half ago, in my opinion, but it's nice to have it firm now. So for my own edification, there are, I think, 3 of the current alternatives that are viable in terms of complying with WashDOT. The bridge won't collapse and doesn't require rope teams. So I just made a little infographic I was going to pass out to council for also one copy of those alternatives, as well as one of a kind of in between. So I know it'll be up to us as council to select an alternative. I think we should examine all of them and the impacts, and the costs of each, but just want to give a heads up that those are coming our way. And so we have a brief impact study session on that one. And that's it for me. Oh yeah, no, go for it.
You, Rich.
Sure, this question, yeah.
I want to hear about,
Sorry.
can you put this in the packet?
Yes, I'll make sure it's in the packet for the
Public?
record, yeah.
Thank you.
Just brought physical copies and get it to them as well, yeah. Good call.
Just wanted to do a quick shout out to all the folks from Public Works, especially Nick Atai, who did a fabulous job at View Ridge Elementary School with the Safe Routes to School project. I'm really excited. There were parents there. I didn't know that Katie from Public Works, her son goes there, and so it was fun to see her there. I'm very pleased to see that there's the multimodal path through what I'm calling the urban forest part of the new park in District 2, that I'm sure is coming, was actually on one of the boards. So I just want to reiterate, I do think that staff hear us and incorporate things, and I just want to give a shout out. It was a great open house with a lot of participation. So
excellent. All right. Another general council business. If there's any brief announcements or mentioning any events between now and the next Wednesday's council meeting or any similar, go to the order. Oh, thank you.
Just a quick shout out, Director Nucky. I don't know what they were doing on Lebo. The sidewalk was totally opened up and there was a crew there. I was pulling my kayak up on wheels from Lent Landing, and they had the sidewalk blocked. There was a truck there. The street was blocked off, and I rolled up and I was like this, what do I do? And they were so nice, and they moved they were let me help you out. Let's stop. They moved the truck out of the way. They moved the pipe out of the way. And I just wanted to like, they don't know who I am, like, but they were just, anybody just rolling up with a kayak. But they were very nice and accommodating and quick to get me back on my way. That's it. Thanks.
That was good in the order. Anna?
Thanks. Okay, this will be really quick. The agenda bill policy, which is in your packet, one of the things that I've been proposing is that we actually enforce it. Because what's happening is our staff is, I understand, rewriting submittals that don't match, that don't meet the policy's requirements, and that they're doing so pretty much up until like 5 o'clock on Wednesday. I think we should be the bad guy here. And just say, look, you have to meet these other deadlines so that the packet we receive on Friday, barring emergencies, of course, right? Like what happened on Oyster Bay Avenue last year, is the packet, and we would have the weekend to look at it. We would be able to calmly and quietly email staff and ask questions so that we're not doing any kind of gotcha here at the study session. And so I'm proposing that once again. There, all done.
All right, seeing nothing else, I will announce the next council meeting is on Wednesday, July 5th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. in the meeting chambers with a remote option. I'm left on my script. It's the 4th of July this weekend already? No.
Yes,
it is.
Yeah,
Holy
it's
cow.
Friday, yeah.
You're right, it is. Okay, because that's on a Tuesday, yeah. Well then, per my script, I'm gonna wish everybody happy 4th of July and also from the bottom of my heart. All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good night, everybody. You're awesome.
Bye.
Good night.
But even if you didn't post it, those watching it live, we're seeing it live. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. All right, let me get up there. I think Stephanie we'll figure it out, Since she's been hard to get there, you might want to call her because I waited there for a while and then I just started walking. Where's the mount and stuff? It's all right there. It's not right there. I brought it all in. Where am I? There's the mount back. And here's the mount.
Recording stopped.
My license. Never mind.
Where's your license? Here's your shoes.